everybody,
Hello.
and welcome to 5 Minutes of Awesomism, where Peyton and I introduce you to people, places, and things that we think are really help turn negativity into awesomism. If you're hearing this podcast, please go over to Spotify, push the follow button, and just listen to a few of our other podcasts as well, because your support really helps us to keep growing. And also follow us on YouTube because we put the podcast on both YouTube and Spotify, and we're working to be on more platforms. So before we do anything, thank you, the Oho sunglasses. I have mine on top of my head, which I love. Peyton has his on. It's TheOhos.com. And they are a major sponsor of ours. And today is the first time that we are introducing another sponsor we just got, which is Farm Hands, and they have an amazing hand cream. It is a hand balm hand cream. It's non-greasy, and when they tell you it's non-greasy, it's non-greasy. Use the code Team Awesomism, and you will get 15% off of your order. Just like with the Oho sunglasses, use Awesomism, and you get 20% off your order. It doesn't matter how much you order, you get the 15 and the 20. So please support our sponsors, because without them, we can't keep spreading awesomism. Today, we're really excited to have someone that I think is really doing a good job at spreading awesomism. She didn't like the system in the school system that her children were going to be in. And by the way, just a little side note, her kids are so cute. Like, they're painfully cute. Okay. And they are. And I was a homeschooler. Everybody that knows me knows I was a homeschooler. I went to private schools my whole life. People have said, that's elitist, whatever. No, my parents chose to put me in a private school because education was important to my parents. And I was raised in the Dutch Christian Reformed Church, so I went to Dutch Christian Reformed schools. And I'm thankful every day that I did. And my children were homeschooled, and I was homeschooling when people were threatening me on the street to put me in jail for truancy. So, because my oldest is in his 40s, so I was homeschooling a long time. I'm a big believer in educational choice. I believe it, especially for those who have children that are special needs, have learning disabilities, or just in general need to be in a different system. So, and I think that should be up to the parents, not the government. So today we have someone who is all of those things. She's a great mother. She is an advocate. And she decided that rather than sit on social media like so many people do and complain, she went out and did something about it. Novel idea. We had a million more of hers. We would need her. We would need to have all these discussions on social media about nonsense. So Taylor, go ahead and tell us everything and anything you want about your journey and where you're at now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Team Awesomism. It's really a privilege to be here. I'm really thankful to have this opportunity to share with you a little bit about our school and our community. So I am launching this fall a school called Kingdom West Montessori. We are in Naperville, Illinois, and we are a Christian Montessori school starting pre-K through 6. So yeah, we're starting this fall, which is really exciting. A little bit about me, just so you know, my background is in early childhood education. That's what most of my career has been in. I went to college at Columbia University in New York, and then did Teach for America and got my master's at Bank Street College of Education while I was doing Teach for America. And so I have a master's in early childhood general education. And then I've worked in all sorts of early childhood settings for the last 20-ish years. And so I've always clearly believed in education, believed in good quality education. One of the things about me that has been good and bad is that I can't do things I don't believe in. So that's been hard in educational systems that I was in, where I felt like the system wasn't serving the children. It really wasn't what they needed best. I think I realized that first when I did Teach for America and I was teaching in the South Bronx. And I just really didn't believe that the curriculum was what the children needed, or that the attitude of the community or the schools, the principals, et cetera. I felt like the administration all had this attitude around families that like they were really failing their children, and it was up to the schools to save the children. And I really, just from a very early age felt like that was not the right attitude at all, and that we really needed to partner with families. And that has always been kind of one of the things that I felt very strongly about, is that, people are sending their children to your school, and whether you agree with all the choices the parents have made or not, it's not really your business, but your job is to kind of come alongside those families and support them the best you can, and to really become help them see the wonderful things about their children, but also to support them and where they are. Because I think it can be easy in education, and I think particularly education that serves low income children, to really judge the families who are bringing their children to the school rather than partner with them. And I feel like that just never really gives you the outcome you want. Then it becomes an us versus them, and really it should be a us on the team of the child, and there's really no them. It's really just us working together. So anyways, now I'm in a totally different kind of demographic and things like that. So we're in Naperville, which already is known for having great public schools. But I think one of the things that a lot of people feel about public schools is that it's not really thinking about their child, and not thinking about what's best for their child in terms of the environment for their child. The curriculums that are taught in the schools, whether you agree with them or you don't have a choice over whether or not that curriculum is taught to your child. And so I think one of the things that's very unique about our school is that we're Montessori and Christian. And so many Christian schools are a little bit more traditional. And I think I really fell in love with Montessori education about 5 or 6 years ago. I really liked that it was hands-on. It really respected children. It respected families. It allowed children to grow at their own pace. It didn't limit children, but it also didn't push them beyond what they were able to do. And I felt like that was really very unique. What you find in public schools and in other school settings is that the whole group is taught the same thing. And maybe that lesson is good for the whole group, but often it isn't. Often it misses the kids. Like if you have a bell curve, it's going to miss the kids on the end. It's going to miss the kids who need more support, but it's also going to miss the kids who are already advanced, and that concept is boring for them. And I always like to say smart, bored children can cause a lot of trouble, because if you're bored and you're smart and you don't care about what's being taught in your classroom, you will find other things to do. And that may or may not be what other people had in mind for you to do at school. So Montessori really is very structured, it's very organized, and it really follows the child and allows the children to learn at their own pace. And a big part of Montessori philosophy is that the environment you teach a child in really matters. And so for us, that means like we can create a good spiritual environment for them, a good emotional environment for them. I think those things are just as important as the academic environment you're creating for children, because children aren't raised in a school. Like that's part of the whole environment, is not just curriculum, but it's also like the emotional system around them, the spiritual system around them, whether it's spoken or unspoken. I think those things are really important.
I completely agree. Before I homeschooled my children, I had my oldest two, I have 4 children. My oldest two were in a Montessori preschool because I wanted to gauge them of where they were going. If they were in a regular preschool, it was going to be, Johnny and everybody else was learning the letter A. Whereas if my child could learn all the way up to Z and maybe another child was only on C, that was okay. There was
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just sitting here hyper competing. And I agree with you, because my oldest child was exceptionally good in school. And that was why I started homeschooling, because I had started them in a private school. Okay. And he found things that were wrong in the curriculum because he was so far ahead. And the
Mm-hmm.
teachers thought it was a really good idea to punish him. And
Mm.
so I took them out and started homeschooling. We weren't given curriculums back then. Like now, there's so many
Yeah,
stores you can order. We had to make a
definitely.
lot of our own. So, I was just going by the seat of my pants, but I was so hyper focusing on my kids. And I think I told you this story on the phone. When I took them out of school, they had started in a Christian school. And then when they thought it was cute to discipline my son, I took them out and started
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling. And for the first week, I had 3 of them, and my third child was only in preschool at that point. And I started just, going through the books. And at the end of the week, I said to my kids, um, did we learn enough? Were we doing enough? Right? Because there was
Mm-hmm.
no guidelines back then. Okay. This
Yeah.
is, 35 years ago. Okay. 36 years ago. And I was like, are we doing enough? Are we doing enough? And my kids are like, you're doing way more than we did in school. And I thought they were just telling me that to get me to back off, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, I know that's not true. And my daughter, who also was, she's extremely intelligent and she's
Hmm.
very, very good at solving problems. So she had a different learning style than my son. And she takes the book that I had taken because I paid for him at this Christian school. And she says, Mom, we only have this much left, and it is only the third week of school. What are we? I was like, oh my God. And I suddenly realized then and there wasn't a
Mhm.
looking for another school because my children were just slowed down in their
Yeah.
learning. So instead, I was adding art, music. We were watching C-SPAN. We were watching movies. We were watching musicals. We
Mhm.
were talking about how to do photography. We were building bird gardens in our yard, and they were doing a part of
Yeah.
it, journaling. All of a sudden, I realized the world was their oyster in learning, and
Hmm.
I was needed to keep up with that, not worry about what this school system was doing. And that was one of the things that I loved with the Montessori. That's why I really like, and that's why I told your husband, I like what you're doing so much because the
Hmm.
Montessori feeds the child. The child is
Yeah.
not eating what is given to them, they're
Yeah.
being fed.
Yeah. And I think that is so much of the difference of that child-led versus teacher-led education. Teacher-led, and I worked in public school, so I saw it. It kind of embraces this philosophy that the teacher has all the knowledge. The child should sit there and just listen and obey and get the knowledge. And, I think for some children and in some subjects that can work well, but I think overall, you want children to develop this love of learning. You want them to develop this idea that they're in charge of the things that they learn. And is there a structure? Does being in charge of the things you learn mean you just act like a wild child all day? No, but it means that if you're really excited about math, and at the age of 3, you're ready for two-digit addition and subtraction, we can do that with you, right?
Right.
It also means, though, that if you're not ready for more advanced language work, I don't have to push that down your throat at 5 either. We can move at your pace. And so I think that's one of the really wonderful things is that kind of respect of the child and like valuing who they are as a person, and also seeing education as like we're trying to teach children not just concepts, but teach them how to be good people, teach them character, teach them um, truth, philosophy, like some of those other things, which at the older grades we're integrating classical curriculum in for some of that. But I think this idea that we need to be thinking more about who is this child becoming, not just what are they learning. Because I think, particularly in the world that we live in today, so much is changing really quickly with technology. And so access to facts, I realized, is not really the game changer, right? It isn't how many facts can you memorize or things like that. It's what do you do with those facts? How can you think about the people behind those facts? How can you synthesize and really think through information, not just take whatever information is given to you? And I think the way the Montessori system is organized really helps children to do that. It teaches them look at the information in front of you and think through it, not just, okay, as long as I regurgitate the right answer, I'm getting it right. Because I think that kind of thinking isn't really going to serve our children well long term, because I think they just need to be more critical thinkers than that.
I do too. And 2 points on that. Number one, I think that what you're doing is also teaching kids to learn the difference between opinions and facts. And that is one of
Mhm.
my biggest things that I put out on social media all the time. Stop presenting your opinions as facts. Just because you think that this is true. I saw this the other day. Somebody put out something, and I'm not going to go into what it was. It was very political. And I was so angry because I know this person personally. And I knew if they spent 5 minutes researching what they put out, they would realize was so far from being factual. But
Mhm.
because somebody else said it, they just spoon fed it the opinion and they spewed it out and they literally put it out. The fact is, and I was losing my mind like,
Mhm.
no, that's your opinion. You're entitled to that opinion, but that is
Yeah.
not a fact. You know, if
Yeah.
I tell you that the sun is going to come up tomorrow morning, that's a fact. If I tell you that I think it's a gloomy day, that's my opinion. You may see it as a glorious day. Stop telling people that your opinions are facts. And I think the Montessori does that. My biggest thing that I garnered when I talk to you and your husband about what you're doing is this. I am a major and always was a major activist for homeschooling from the umbrella school side. Very
Hmm.
few people know what umbrella schools are. I am a massive believer in the umbrella school system. I fought
Hmm.
so hard for that when I worked in politics, and I won. And I will tell you, what you're doing is a version of an umbrella school. And that was very, very important to me because I can't, otherwise, it looks hypocritical of me as such a strong homeschooling activist to say, oh, I think it's so great that people are starting schools. But
Hmm.
when they're starting schools that I believe really do carry the same value system, the same thought process, and the same educational system, that's not hypocritical. Because I've had people say that to me in the past when I've supported a school. Well, I thought you were a
Hmm.
big homeschooler. That's a school. No, if you understand what the umbrella school system is, you will
Hmm.
understand that not everyone can homeschool or wants to homeschool their children. So, what you're doing is another version of an umbrella school. And I really applaud you for that. I hope this is so ridiculously successful that 3 years from now, you're back on our podcast and we're talking about how overwhelmed you are because you've got the template all over the country.
That's wonderful. And I think, what we're building here is community more than just creating a place for people to send their children every day. I think, it really matters the community and the people you raise your children around. Like we do become like the people around us for better or worse. And you see that a lot when you send your kids off to daycare or public school or even like a different programming. They see, oh, their friends around them are doing something. So then they're going to start doing something. And so you want to ask, what are those friends around them doing? Right. Like that really matters because I think, at a certain point, children, their families matter, but their peers matter a lot too. And how they relate to those friendships, especially if they get older into middle school, those things really matter. And those children, and you want to make sure that you're putting your children around other good children. And I think that's part of what we're interested in creating here. Like, we're not interested in dictating how people parent their children, but we are interested in creating a good environment where people care about each other. They're responsible. They think thoughtfully about how their actions affect the people around them. They think about, how can I work hard at what I'm doing now for where I am at my level? The point isn't to compete with my friend next to me, but the point is where I am and what I'm doing now, how can I do this well? Right? Because it's really, I'm interested in children having a sense of pride and doing things well, not a sense of shame that I'm not where somebody else is. I don't think that's a beneficial. Doesn't drive children, or it can to a certain point, but it's more fear-based than it is
Right.
self-assured. And I really do want children to see, like, who are they, and like to know that their innate value is based on things that are not just about how can I achieve academically, but what do I bring to the world as a person, not just what do I bring home in my report card. I think those are two very different things. It's education is important, obviously. I'm here in education, but I think of education as a lot more than just the academics for the children.
That's why I love what you do, and that's why we wanted to have you on today because we want you to, be able to put this out there because I think I really admire that you're taking this on. It's not easy. You have two beautiful daughters,
It is not
and
easy.
no, it's not. It's not. Trust me, I know. When I was starting co-ops and other things, I was like sitting at my kitchen table a couple times, bawling, saying, "What was I thinking?" But then when
Hmm.
I look back at it, one of the things that I'm the most proud of is how hard I did work to make changes and make them for other people, not just my own children. And I
Mm.
think that's something that you are teaching other people is that don't sit around and complain, get out and do something. And by the way, think outside yourself because not everyone has the skill set, the desire, the time, or the energy to go and
No,
start a school. So,
that's
but
true.
they
Or to
want what
homeschool their
you
own
have.
children,
Yep,
right? That
exactly.
takes a certain kind of person to do that. I know for myself, I would not be a good homeschooler, but I can be a good school administrator and I can create a good environment for families. And I think, it's such a blessing in our communities. Like we should be a place where, I don't know, I just feel as a Christian, I should be creating more and more environments where people feel welcome and loved, regardless of what religious background or any other kind of political background, any of those other things. I think, yeah, that we should be just creating more and more environments where people can thrive and feel welcome and loved. And I think schools are part of that too. I don't think they should be separate from that.
No, I completely agree with you. I have this conversation with my husband all the time. And I think too often people cut off something because they're afraid of what could be instead of understanding what should be. And
Mhm.
I just, I don't know. I'm a big believer in what you're doing. We support you. I've told you that. And I wish you nothing but the best. And we really
Thank
appreciate you
you.
coming on today. As a fellow parent who really worried about her children's education,
Mm,
I honestly applaud you for what you're doing, because it's not easy, but at the same time the rewards are great, and you're doing things for children. It's kind of like when I used to run the vacation Bible school at my church. I
mhm,
would always tell the other teachers, this may be the only week of some child's life that is coming out of maybe an abusive home where they're not getting fed emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually. Maybe this is the only week that for 3 hours in the morning, they feel loved, they feel cared about, and they may be actually learning something. If a child doesn't
mhm,
know how to sit down or eat their snacks properly, don't jump down them. Let's work with them, because that 5 days, those 15 hours we have those kids, may be the only 15 hours of their young life where they were calm, they were happy, and they actually learned, and they felt like somebody
mhm.
cared. And
Yeah.
I was adamant on that, because it wasn't just about, hey, let's get new members to the church. To me, it wasn't about that. It was about, let's really take what we're supposed to be doing as Christians and let's
Mhm.
pass that along. And I
Yeah.
remember we had one little boy, and you could just tell his parents had nothing. And it broke my heart. And the mother was the sweetest, kindest thing. And at the end of the week, we would give prizes, right? For different
Mhm,
things. And I gave him a major prize. Okay. Like he won. And
mhm,
the mother came up to me afterwards, and it still makes me emotional, like 30 years later. And she was like, thank you. He loved this week so much.
mhm,
And she said, he told them, nobody bullied me. And that broke my heart, that
mhm,
that was first in his head. And we gave them like Chick-fil-A coupons. I
mhm,
wanted him to go home. I gave them two little t-shirts because I could tell they didn't have much, right?
mhm,
And I thought, if this kid goes home and says, for that one week, those people at that church actually loved me, actually
mhm.
cared about me, maybe that will help him not be angry at the world either for always being on the receiving end of ugliness.
Yeah. And
That's
I
what,
think,
go ahead.
sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, I think we can underestimate how powerful those things are. And I think those small moments with children, those 15 hours, you might say, how does that really matter? It's 168 hours in a week, however many hours in a year, like so many, right? But I think though it really makes a big difference. And I think children hold on to that seed in their hearts, and they know that somebody cared and loved for them. And I think it follows them with them. And I think it matters a lot.
Oh, I do too. I completely do.
Hmm.
That's why we do the bags of awesomism that we've started to do. We're doing this major thing called the bags spreading awesomism. And we have a gift bag or a tote bag,
Hmm.
depending on who it's going to. And we fill it with all kinds of items. We go out and get sponsors, and we put so many things into it. And we had a gentleman the other day, he's an older autistic. He doesn't eat well. He's got diabetes. He's got things. Everything
Hmm.
we put in there was very specific for him, because you know why? When he gets up in the morning after he opened that bag, I want him to know there is someone out there that does care about him, that is
Hmm.
trying to make his life, just even if it's just for the 10 minutes that they're taking everything out of their bag, and they
Hmm.
look at we give everybody a bracelet and a magnet. So they put it on their refrigerator or somewhere else and wear the bracelet. And we tell them, know that somebody cares. And then if
Hmm.
they are really struggling, they can come back to Team Awesomism. We will help them with programs, connect them with people
Hmm.
or whatever. Because at the end of the day, all anybody really wants is to know someone else cares, that they're not walking
Yeah.
the path of this world alone. And I applaud you, because you're taking children into a school to show them, look, we care, we're here, And we're going to make
Mhm.
sure that you get a really good shot at your adulthood by making sure that you get a really loving, nurturing education.
Hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about this. I think, we have 12 days until school starts, so it's a big push at the end of the school, at the end of the summer to prepare classrooms. I'm actually sitting in one of our classrooms now that's on its way. But yeah, it's an exciting time. We're like getting more students, fundraising, still doing all of the things, but it's good to always keep in the front of our minds that like we're not doing this just to check off tasks, but really to prepare a wonderful environment for these children and these families. So, yep, T minus 12 days for us.
Awesome. And we'll make
Nice.
sure we do a follow-up at the end of the school year so we can
Okay.
get more of an update of what's going on. And if you need anything, you know where we are. You have my cell phone number. Just text anytime. We'll help you in any way we can.
Thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Yeah, keep up with the
Thank
incredible
you.
work, Taylor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, bye.